Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, let me go close my door for Sonia.
No problems. So while we're waiting for the larger group,
Hmm.
um, so I would still like to wrap up the Linux Foundation wide thing, and what I'm what I'm thinking might be a good. I didn't realize we're on recording. For incoming vulnerability reports, what I'd like to do is maybe just quickly cobble together some sort of safe harbor statement based on existing materials that's generic, and
Hmm.
then send it to legal to get that reviewed and beat up and so on.
Uh, yeah. That sounds.
Because otherwise, if we just say, "Hey, legal, write something," that's asking a lot. But I sure as heck I'm not. I am not going to play a lawyer on TV. Well, I guess I can play a lawyer on TV, but I'm not going to pretend to be a lawyer.
Hmm.
I think writing something down to say this is kind of what we had in mind. Please turn it into actual legal stuff instead of this nonsense.
Hmm.
And
Um,
so maybe you and I should have a brief discussion about that.
yes. Probably not today, but yes.
Yeah. How about
I mean,
tomorrow?
yeah, that works. I would take the more exact, like, I would start with the wording from disclose.io.
All right. Well, tell you what, let's, I don't know that you're, let's see, Jonathan. There you are. I'm going to add you to the people of so how about how about tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time, which is noon Pacific time?
He's 3 o'clock, yeah.
Your calendar says it's okay.
Yes.
All right. I will send you an invite. Basically, let's talk about it, bang out a very early draft, and I guess probably eventually we'll want get both legal review and public review. I don't know what the process is, but
Yeah. I sent you the disclose.io policymaker.
uh, I don't know that I saw that. But okay,
I sent it to your LF Slack.
okay, yeah. Hold up, I'm trying to create a meeting for you and I tomorrow. So. Uh, so what are we talking about?
Like, why can't I see myself? Oh, I've got my little camera covering. Hello, Jeffrey.
Happy Monday.
You're part of the TAC, are you not?
No, I'm chair of the governance committee.
Ah, is the TAC fully seated or no?
Yes.
I believe it is. They announced the three appointed positions. The fellow from GitHub, Arnaud from IBM, and a third individual whose name escapes me at the moment.
I believe they're even already listed on the public site, though. I guess I should double check that. All right, Jonathan, I've sent you an email.
Sure.
You're gonna see more of me. Sorry.
Uh, it's fine. Okay. Um, let's do this the good old fashioned way. Today is 01. Um,
Mayday,
yeah, right.
Mayday, Mayday.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna run this as if it's somewhat a standard meeting. The top meeting notes is for Wednesday. So if you scroll down, there's one for 2023-05-01. If you could mark your attendance, that would be greatly appreciated. Make sure you do it for the right one.
Can I put dashes in these dates?
Yeah. I mean, it's not, yeah.
Just easy. It's easier to parse.
No, I agree. It's just, yeah, it's just, I'm following the formatting of the rest of the document, but yes.
I can be bold and just start inserting it, and we'll see if people will keep following it. Oh, there we go. All right. I have indicated May Day.
Let's see.
Now, this is our main meeting. This is not the main meeting. I'm now confused.
No, this is the main meeting is normally on Wednesdays. This is an abnormal meeting. Okay. Pulling up the document. Okay, we are discussing the Open Source Security Foundation outbound vulnerability disclosure policy and the model outbound vulnerability disclosure policy version 1.0.1. Post a link to that in the
Yeah, put that in the meeting notes.
meeting notes, yes.
Yeah, and I would kill the heading. Well, okay.
Yeah, let me kill the heading again. Yeah. See if I can get it to do the thing where it. Yeah. Okay. All right, let me post a link to that into the chat too for anybody. Is there anybody here from the TAC? From the email that I sent to the TAC? Or who is speaking for? Well, so much for all my effort to try to get the TAC involved. Okay. So I presume that you have all read this. Is that an assumption that is sane to make, or no?
It's correct for me.
Yeah. Do we have anybody who has, let me just start here. Do we have anybody who has any opinions on the name of the model, but not necessarily this one? I mean, if you have an opinion there, great. But mostly on the title, Model Outbound Vulnerability Disclosure Policy version 0.1. I saw some feedback about it starting with 1.0.
I saw that feedback. I have a slight question about the word model, but it's not super important.
Go for it. What's your question?
Yeah, basically this is to be the policy that's going to be used, or is it a model for others to copy, import, modify, etc.?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. So
okay,
the model,
sure,
the model one is anybody can incorporate this, right? Like,
yep.
Start could accept, you're starting a security research organization, you need a policy for outgoing reports. You can use this one as a starting, and then this upper part, let me screen share. The upper one is so this is the policy, right? The new policy. This up here is the Open Source Security Foundation stating that they are adhering to this policy as the policy for the OpenSSF.
Okay.
Yeah. David, I had a spark of inspiration. I still don't love this right here, will likely. When we observe a previously unknown to the public and unpatched vulnerability in software under active exploitation, a 0-day, we believe that more urgent action is appropriate. The publication date for a 0-day will likely be accelerated to 7 days of the public of the notice date.
I'll say will normally.
Yep, so that's a thought. I don't like the idea of including like probability, because likely implies probability.
Sure. I mean, so does normally, in fact.
Yeah.
Anything other than shall or must or must not implies probability. But why don't you say will normally be? Because I think that's the primary concern you've got.
I mean, we could do normally. The other thing that popped in my head yesterday is will, comma, except under extreme circumstances.
Where are you?
Here.
The anonymous bat. Okay, so we believe it's important maintainers disclose.
I would suggest typically instead of normally.
Sure.
I mean, normally is actually stronger.
Yeah, I agree that normally is stronger than typically. I was thinking will, I mean, yeah, will in except for in extreme circumstances. Like that is
Okay. Will except well, I would say except in unusual or something like that.
Yeah.
Extreme is extreme, but
Yeah.
will except in unusual circumstances. Yeah, all I'm doing is just making it possible to have the out.
Yeah.
Well, so in a formal document, right? You take words like that out. Typically, normally, all that stuff out. You follow it up with a sentence. Or you say, this will happen within 7 days, or with the following exceptions, and then you note those. Like I don't like what that words like typical, normally, all that stuff. That's too much. That's too much gray for a formal document.
Jay, I'm intentionally adding the gray because otherwise it means that chips have to be modified in 7 days, and and software designs have to be rewritten in 7 days. We know that can't happen.
Right. Well, you say with the following exceptions, then.
Well, that is actually going to be following.
Nothing. I mean, nothing needs to be fixed. We're just going to disclose.
No,
I mean,
if you're disclosing, you are now exposed. This is the original conversation we had. Poor John. Sorry, Jonathan. I guess we're gonna hear the argument again. The problem
Someone's got some big background noise. If they could mute, thank you.
Yeah, the problem we've got is that there's many cases where we've got an attacker, but it's not known to most attackers. And if we disclose to everyone, we're causing much more harm by letting all the attackers know, when in fact it's a very small subset of attackers who are exploiting something.
Sure.
So the overall goal, I think of this as an integration problem. You're integrating over time.
Yes.
You are trying to minimize the total area of damage.
Yep.
There's going to be damage no matter what you do. You're trying to minimize the total damage around the world.
Yeah, totally agree, and I get the trade-off. All I'm suggesting is that we keep the flexibility because we don't know what the integration is going to look like before that event happens exactly. Some of them are clear evidence of public exploitation. Everyone already knows. Why are we going to wait 5 days to disclose? I want to just be sure that we can act accordingly in that situation. And to your point, David, if we know there's a little bit of stuff going on, but disclosing it publicly would really open the floodgates too soon and fuck up the integration curve. Yes, we should hold off for up to 7 days. No argument there. I just want the policy to allow both ends of the equation.
So could we write in the front of the sentence then, in most cases?
I'm actually proposing the publication for a 0 day will be accelerated within 7 days of the notice date, except in unusual circumstances as described below.
Okay, so good. Then we're on that. We're on the same sheet of music with that sentence. Absolutely.
Okay, great.
So, and then we have to describe unusual circumstances. I mean, the unusual circumstances that
Text, yeah.
wait, is there?
Oh, sorry,
better
I'm
be.
reading,
Well, so okay, David's proposed it, so okay, here's my question.
They-
Art,
they- they-
you've
yeah.
been working in disclosure for a long time, and I spoke to Madison about this during the last call too. David's proposal here is that the unusual circumstances be you can deterministically determine that that there's only a single attacker with knowledge of the vulnerability.
what I'm suggesting is that the way we write the policy, we allow ourselves the ability to, in David's terms, right, create that integration, whatever function for that case as it goes.
Hmm.
And I would never probably say deterministically, there's only one attacker who knows, but there could be few, we could expect that there are few. I would fully agree that a premature public disclosure increases the area of damage. On the other hand, a overly mature disclosure also increases the area of damage. I just want the policy words, I'm suggesting that the policy words give us the flexibility there. And I think that they do. I thought the described below was the following highlighted paragraph.
No, that paragraph is more a rationale
Yeah.
behind the 7-day policy.
Okay, well here, I think literally within 7 days, I think actually addresses my issue letter of the law. You know, 0 minutes is within 7 days, and 7 days is within 7 days. So back when we wrote this at CERT CC, we did not explain much, but it's a much easier policy to maintain when you keep it less words. But I'm not saying we should delete stuff here. Just that, yeah. Anyway, yeah. Over.
So Jay is looking for more examples, and your
Sorry, I didn't. I don't think I have any trouble with the current text. I understand. I appreciate having to get into the gray. I think that's necessary and appropriate. I don't think it's possible to nail down a precise in every case. When are we going to add time, delete time? It's just too messy in advance to know that. If I pretended I was a lawyer, I would say within 7 days addresses my concerns of being able to go immediately.
the problem with putting a rash, every single vendor will argue that they need more than 7 days, right? There will be no vendor that will be like, well, in our case, 7 days, you disclosing prior to there being a fix is going to protect, like every single vendor is going to argue that. And I think that calling out that we need, we as an industry need to be able to accept that O-days are being exploited, and that information needs to get out sooner than maybe vendors can get or maintainers can get fixes out is a norm, right? And so if we put in this policy ammunition that a vendor can use to argue, then you're just going to start, then you just have another point to argue over with the maintainer beyond fix the damn vulnerability and accept that this is being exploited publicly. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. I have added a new paragraph below. Okay, because I actually completely agree with Jay that if you're going to have an exception, you need to explain the rationale. The when does that exception? I had some text earlier. I don't know what happened to it, so I've put in some different text. Maybe this will be more acceptable. The exception is in cases where we can determine that the overall damage to users will be less if more than 7 days are granted. This would typically be because there's no evidence that most attackers are aware of the vulnerability and are thus unlikely to exploit it.
Is that unique, or are there other possible exceptions? I'm only asking David.
I wrote it as not unique, but it could obviously be changed to be unique. I mean, you could say instead of typically be, you could say because. I mean, if
Well,
you
the
wanted to
only
do it
point
that
I'm
way,
trying to poke at is that if we don't want to go through the exercise of trying to imagine every exception. But if there's likely to be more than one, we might want to just structure it as a, for example.
yeah.
I think there are lots of exceptions potentially. This is a strong one here. I mean, this is a clearly
Yeah,
a large factor, but there are other factors. Yeah.
I think I like it this way, but I think what this way does is it opens up another avenue in the document for a maintainer or someone else to provide some type of evidence that it's going to take some type of evidence to the fact that things will be safer if you take longer time or something like that, right?
Right.
Something should come back to say, well, provide us a reason, provide us with reasoning for, or there should be some type of reasoning provided for for the notification to take longer. Right. I mean, I think with that wording, that's what that opens. It opens up to requiring that additional information.
So, okay, the way this is currently written, if only one attacker knows about this, but they are exploiting it widely, that currently as written gives them the flexibility to say, well, it's only one attacker, even though they're exploiting it widely.
Right.
Right. Well, right. But that's you show that.
Although
Right?
frankly, if your attacker's exploiting it widely, other attackers are going to become aware of it. I don't, the way an attacker makes the world not aware of it is by really focusing the attacks. I attack a couple journalists. That's it. It's much less. Whereas, oh look, I'm going to download and attack everybody on the internet. You can't keep that a secret.
When you actually try to go through the process of disclosure, there are so many places you can have arguments.
Sure.
And I struggle with the thing that I'm struggling with is giving another place for a maintainer to engage in an argument with you in the vulnerability disclosure process is exhausting. It sounds, as the reporter, to be another point to exhaust and wear you down as the reporter.
Right. The problem is, of course, that it's actually not we're trying to optimize, frankly, not for the reporter, but for the end user.
Right.
We're trying to minimize damage to end users. Now, I agree that if you overwhelm the reporter too much, that's also going to cause long-term harm to the end users. And yes, we determine.
So
All right. How's this? Why don't we counter it by countering by merely requiring more time to fix is not an adequate justification, since everyday users are unwarned will lead to additional harms to users.
You use user twice, but additional harms.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to use the same word twice.
Yeah. Since every day.
In fact, please do that. If you mean the same thing, please use the same word.
Roughly speaking, we have a 90-day rule with some expectations of some times within there. We have an exception for O-Day.
7 days.
And then we have an exception to the exception.
Correct.
Okay.
Um. Here, I'm gonna rearrange this, David, a little bit. Hang on.
Sure. I figured I put text down and we can. Yeah, I appreciate the goal of making things simple and rigid, but I think over rigidity is its own problem. Oh, whoop! You moved it above
I
all
know,
the.
I'm working on it. Hang on. Just give me a
Okay.
second.
All right. Do you mean?
As a result, if 7 days have elapsed without. No, they may not, I mean, if the maintainer's not working on a fix, that's not necessarily like a clause. Right? Like, let's say we have an unresponsive or non-active maintainer. We're not going to like do this any differently if the maintainer's not working on a fix.
I mean, how would you know? 7 days isn't really enough time to even notify. If it's a European on a 2-week vacation, they may come back and deal with it in hours, but they won't know for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So I would can this. I don't know, what do you think?
I mean, canning the parenthetical is fine. I mean, that was just the rationale, not the.
This new this
Yeah,
line you have
while
here?
the yeah, feel free to can the while the maintainers work
Okay.
to fix it. That was just a.
Okay, when we observe a previously unknown to the public and unpatched vulnerability in software under exploitation, we believe that more urgent action is appropriate. The publication date for an O day will be accelerated to within 7 days of the notice date. Except in unusual circumstances. And then we say the exception.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not defining the unusual circumstances. That's defining an exception. No. No, it's like. With one except, so how about this? The publication date for an O day will be accelerated to within 7 days of the notice date. With one exception.
Okay. Well, yeah. Now you've moved the. Um,
How's that?
how about that?
The exception is for the exception for the accelerated release on O days. The exception for the accelerated release on O days is the case where we how about we offer an exception for cases where we determine that the overall damage to the user will be less if more than 7 days are granted. This would typically be because there is no evidence that attackers are aware of the vulnerability. This would typically be because there is evidence that there is evidence that most attackers are unaware
Okay,
of the
fine.
vulnerability, and
All
thus widespread exploitation
Is unlikely.
This would typically be because there's evidence that most attackers are unaware of the vulnerability, and thus widespread exploitation is unlikely, merely requiring more time to fix. Merely requiring more time to fix
The vulnerability. Now you've changed the,
is not an adequate
Yeah,
justification,
good.
since everyday users are unwarned will lead to additional harm.
This is fine. We're sort of
Yeah.
arguing both sides in 3 sentences here, and just commentary. I don't have text changes here. It's difficult unless you are supremely well positioned to really understand the threat,
Yes.
going on, right?
Yes. We offer an exception for cases where we determine that the overall damage to users will be less, comma.
comma. No, there's no comma. There's no
No.
comma. Comma doesn't make sense there. Well,
We offer
if-
an exception for cases where we determine that. No, determine.
no, not believe. Believe is irrelevant. It's determine. I don't care what your
All right.
beliefs are.
The word determine sounds like we know something more than we're going to probably know. So that's okay.
Well,
I'm
no.
good with determine.
Determine
Yeah.
is a decision.
Okay. Yes. Good.
In general, you always determine based on incomplete evidence, incomplete data, because no one
that's
knows
fine.
everything.
I'm good with that.
Will determine that the overall damage to users will be less if more than 7 days are granted. Wait, this seems like a double negative. We offer an exception for cases where we determine that the overall damage to users will be less.
Yeah, the phrasing "less if more" is quite
Yes,
awkward. Will be reduced.
That there will be less damage.
mitigated?
Their houses. There will be less overall damage to users if more.
yes, yes.
And let's have only one I in will. Excellent.
We offer an exception for cases where we determine that there will be less overall damage to users if more than 7 days are granted.
So
What is the timeline in this case?
It can be up to. It could be up to the time limit, 90 days.
I also think it's really weird that we have this language there that's evidence that attackers are unaware. This seems awkward. This burden of proof requires you
That's
of
it.
evidence of something, not the
being-
evidence of the absence of something.
Yeah,
So
that's a trap.
Are not exploiting the vulnerability.
like you could have evidence that somebody's aware of something, but you can't have evidence that they're unaware of something.
You know what? You can just say that there's evidence that widespread exploitation is unlikely.
That's a lot better.
Yep.
Maybe you need to. We find evidence because we find evidence, or we have evidence. I guess there is okay. I see. Under this exception, the original time limit remains in effect.
User previously unknown to the public and unpatched vulnerability in software under active exploitation. An ODay. An ODay?
Well, is it a 0 day or an O day?
A 0 day, okay. Yes, we believe that more urgent action is appropriate. The publication date for a 0 day will be accelerated to within 7 days of the notice date, with one exception described below. We offer an exception for cases where we determine that there will be less overall damage to users if more than 7 days are granted. This would typically be because there is evidence that widespread exploitation is unlikely. Maintainers merely requiring more time to fix the vulnerability is not an adequate justification, since everyday users are unwarned will lead to additional harm. Under this exception, the original time limit remains in effect.
Yep. And I got rid of the with described below because it's the next sentence.
Yeah. The reason for this special O-day designation is that for each day an actively exploited vulnerability remains undisclosed to the public and unpatched, more devices or accounts to be compromised. 7 days is an aggressive time limit and may be too short for some maintainers to update their software, but should be enough time for maintainers to publish advice about possible mitigation, such as temporary disabling services, restricting access, or contacting the maintainer for more information.
All right.
Reducing risk. What I are
Sorry, no, you finish up. I'm trying not to distract. I have a couple things
no,
to
go
throw
for
in.
it.
Okay. So also I want to say Yodam has had his hand up, I think.
Oh,
So
sorry, Yoda.
Yeah, no worries. Just didn't want to throw you off. Just a quick question. Do we reference or want to reference somewhere in the document a case where the vulnerability is in an end of life out of support package in which there will be no fix?
That's
Or
handled here.
Yeah, I think that's handled here because here's the thing. There's been many cases where something is out of support, it's out of life, and so on, and there's a crisis, and it gets fixed anyway. So I think it's appropriate to give maintainers that if it's a 0 day, to go ahead and give them that 7 day time, even if it's officially out, because they may decide, yeah, but we're going to do it anyway.
so, for example, if we take log4j, I don't know, let's say 1.2, and we suddenly tomorrow there's a critical vulnerability.
Yep.
So, and the maintainers say, okay, this is from 2012, we're not going to fix it. Then where does it fall within?
Is it being actively exploited?
it could be for people who are still running software from 2012.
No. Is it being actively exploited? That is the question. Is it a 0 day?
So
If it's a 0 day, it goes under the 7 days. Otherwise, it goes under the time limit.
okay,
That's the
Gotcha.
logic of this. Now, you can argue that maybe that's not right, but I actually don't. I don't think we should care whether or not it's obsolete, because people say that they're not going to maintain, and then they get a report, and then they change their mind. So I don't. I think we should just, follow the process and ignore that. It's less helpful.
Okay.
Now, if they reply to us and say we're not going to fix it, I think that's already covered, isn't it? If they express, if we do not receive any engagement, well, yeah, we already say if we do not receive engagement that infirms their intention, we reserve the right to explore to disclose at that point. So basically, if they say, "Nah, we're not going to fix it,"
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess according to this logic, but it's not getting, but yeah, basically it says it's 35 days at that point because we have not received any engagement that says they're going to fix it. They've actually said they won't, but I guess that then it's still just within the 35. Is there an argument for that? I guess they could change their mind, but we could add one more bullet that basically says if they respond and say they will not fix it, then that can be immediately released.
I was thinking that exact same thing too.
Yeah, let me copy the second bullet down to the bottom. I'm gonna make a shot. Oh, are you gonna do it? Go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, if the maintainers declare they will not fix it, then it can be immediately released.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So great point. Great question. I'm sorry, I lost who said that now. Yotam. Maybe immediately released. Yeah. Okay. So I think that covers it now. What do you agree? Yotam, do you agree?
Yeah, think so.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, and that also, but I think that deals with the we declare it obsolete case, because as I said, Microsoft has many times, and frankly, I think this is a good thing. Fixed vulnerabilities and stuff they formally declared were obsolete, and they we're not going to fix it, and then they change their mind, and I'm grateful for those cases. They're usually pretty awful when they happen.
How about that? If the maintainers communicate the reported vulnerability will not be fixed, or state it is a bug, not a vulnerability. No, or. Oh, and is not state. Okay, yeah.
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 I mean, something like this. Otherwise, I'm struggling to follow the text.
Yeah. I.e.
Actually, you know what? Or stated is not a vulnerability. I mean, that's all you care about, right?
Yeah.
It's not a vulnerability.
Yes.
Usually comes on the back of some major customer running some type of something or other on a legacy system that only runs you can only run Windows 95 on something buck wild like that.
Hmm.
Oh, you think that's wild? Let me introduce you to certain organizations.
I'm being facetious. I'm being facetious when I say that. I'm right there. I'm right there with you. I know these organizations.
Yeah.
They're running some type of crazy application that can only be run on a legacy OS of some sort,
Yep.
on some type of bastion host somewhere that only connects one time, once every 5 years to receive something or other. And that is the one time when somebody decides to introduce something crazy. So yes,
Careful.
they'll reach out and say, hey, I'm trying to be as clandestine as I can when I talk like this. Come on,
Now,
Jeff.
you know the definition of legacy system, right? That just means it still works.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yeah, I actually have a presentation where I make that pitch. Legacy is just, I even have a sticker where, we're building the legacy systems of tomorrow.
Tomorrow. It ain't
It's a
broke.
VM snapshot from before Y2K.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It's the only way you get the software to run.
Are damage versus risk?
Just as we were writing today, I think David used the word damage, and we have harm, and we have risk somewhere. I don't have a strong opinion. I usually write risk. I just would suggest we be consistent. And then also,
okay, so looking at the CVSS v3 scoring system, they have confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Are you saying that one of those kind of risk encapsulates more of them than damage potentially does?
definitely, and I don't know why we're looking at CVSS for this, but
Yeah.
I know, but
yeah,
I know.
Yeah, I said damage, but risk means likelihood and consequence. To be honest, when I say overall, I'm integrating the likelihood and impact, but overall risk to users, I think is fine.
yeah, I don't have a strong opinion. Damage. Yeah, you could say the same for, we talk about harm and things like that. So just mostly editorial. Let's pick one word and use it 3 times as opposed to using 3 words. Confusing people.
So the word risk, the word risk implies so reducing the amount of risk is reducing the amount of chances for damage to actually occur. Right? Versus right. So you're reducing the potential for the damage to occur. If you're reducing the damage occurring, right? It's like you're abstracting it one step away. And so risk in and of itself is kind of nebulous, right?
Well, I think in this case it doesn't matter, because when you say overall damage to users, as I said, you are doing a sum of all the damages. Some of them will have damage, some of them will not, which basically encapsulates the likelihood. So I think if I was doing calculus, I'd say these 2 equations have the same answer. If you sum up all the damage, or you compute the expected damages for each and you sum up, it's the same thing. It's what are you expecting the overall harm to be?
Yeah, and Jonathan, damage is fine. I'm just suggesting we use, unless we need different words, let's just be consistent with.
So this is the reason that I'm kind of bringing this up, right?
Sure.
Country A builds nuclear bomb. Country B builds nuclear bomb, right? They're both pointed at one another. There is a lot of risk there, but because both of them have nuclear bombs pointed at each other, less likely that they're going to actually shoot at one another.
Well,
right?
That lowers the risk. Sure.
It lowers the risk, but the risk, the existence of country A having built bomb outside of the context of both countries having bomb is right. It has to do with, there's a certain amount of the risk is the potential for a thing to happen. The actual thing the thing actually being likely to happen may, risk is so nebulous that it has to do with the probability of the risk occurring, and that probability may be 1%, but I'm
Yeah,
having
yeah. I think the thing is, at this point, we are no longer talking about likelihoods of whether or not there's a vulnerability. Anyway, we know for certainty, probability one, that there's a vulnerability.
Yeah,
The only question now is how exploitable is it in various contexts.
right.
I think less damage overall.
Okay, how about that? How about this? We offer an exception for cases where we determine that there's less likely widespread exploitation.
Shoot. Did it again.
That we're reducing the likelihood of widespread exploitation. Like we'd be specific.
You don't care about.
Yeah, I mean,
it's damage you
look,
care about.
Yeah, and it again. I don't think the word. All I'm really asking. This is more of an editorial position than a debate on risk versus consequence versus threat versus probability. I think there's still probabilities involved. Someone's still going to choose to attack or not, a lot or a little. One person doing it a lot, one person doing it to one key place. There's a lot of factors. For this policy, I don't think it matters the choice of word. But again, unless we mean different things at different points in the policy, let's say, and damage is fine. David wrote damage this morning, but we have harm somewhere else, which is a synonym, great, and we have risk down below, which is a different word. So just
consistency.
We can just pick, yeah.
Harm or damage, I don't care.
Okay, and then the reason I also brought it up is I went, as David was talking about the integration of the minimizing damage for users, I went and thought we should just have that sentence somewhere. I put it up at the top, but it's actually already sorted down here. And I threw it back. I put it in again more clearly. This is sort of covered by reducing risk for the ecosystem and soft landings, but I thought we should just state this clearly. This is a little different than, we're just doing this to get researchers to do what we want, or we're just doing it for maintainers. If we are really doing it for everyone, let's be clear about that. And I think that's a great thing to say, but maybe that's not our position here. So that's when then I wrote the word risk, and then I thought, what did we say elsewhere? We said damage, we said harm, we said risk. So we can debate leaving this sentence in or not. And then again, let's just use damage throughout. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Over. Yeah.
Overall harm. Yeah. Okay. Now we have harm in two places.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Is needed to minimize harm to users while respecting the interests of the researchers. I mean, is it interest or is it, well, okay, so the reason a policy like this exists is two things, right? It's you use the where this policy actually gets used and has to get deployed creates a precedent that shows maintainers that their failing to act will necessarily result in negative downstream consequences to their end users. Right? So it's not about respecting the interests of researchers and maintainers. It's this policy is not just for the one vulnerability, but it is for all future vulnerabilities beyond the point where you actually have to exercise it.
Agreed, but maintainers are busy and have other interests and motivations, and researchers want things a certain way, and there's no reason to piss them both off and not respect them. So the sentence I wrote is sort of already covered. I just thought it was more clear to just say it right away. If indeed if minimizing harm to users is really the goal, which I think should be the goal. Let's say that flat out, because this also puts the researchers and the maintainers on notice that, hey, we're minimizing damage. That may not be the thing that you want to do, because you may want us to wait 97 more days and we're not going to, or you might want us to drop the 0 day immediately and we're not going to, because we think we have determined that we made a choice to minimize harm to users, which may not be in the best interest of either the researcher or the maintainer. So again, it's sort of covered. It's not critical. I'm not going to fight for this sentence. Yeah.
Let me think about it. Chris,
okay. And there's a hand up too.
Yeah, Chris, you got a point up here.
We've been kind of going through it in the chat, and I put it as a comment on the doc. It's just a little bit of a nit, but
Because it gives you
qualifying.
flexibility.
there's qualifying language there. Yeah, I don't think it's earth shattering one way or the other, but
Right, if we do a may, then it gives you the flexibility to make the decision to apply that in certain situations, but not in others, maybe.
yeah, there's also qualification that happens after where it says, what's like if there's some criteria given for at least for what's not adequate justification, for example.
Hmm. Okay. All right, this is, do we feel like that, is that sufficiently handled with the may?
I'm sorry, we may offer an exception. And except, yeah, the problem is it's an exception on exception. We maybe can we just say we may offer more than 7 days?
Oh God, this restructured. We may,
We may offer we may offer more than 7 days for cases where we determine that will result in less overall harm to users.
we are defining
No,
that.
no, 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 not there, not there. I was
No, no,
talking
no,
about
no.
the next sentence.
No, I get that, but we're stating with one exception, and we need to state
Right.
this
It's
is where
contextual.
it's contextualizing it.
Oh, I
Right.
see.
So if
Right.
you're gonna say don't use the word exception there, then we've got to massage the other two references.
I see. Okay.
Also, this is technically a new, I mean, inside of a bullet, this is 2 paragraphs, but they're not indented such. But yes, this is a new sub-paragraph within the bullet.
Yeah, I mean it's actually 2. Yeah,
It's 3 paragraphs within one bullet.
Three.
that's right.
Yeah.
I would make sub bullets, but
I don't. Yeah. Yeah, I don't. like that.
HTML handles sub bullets just fine.
I know it does. I just don't think that I don't think that this is a point worth sub-bulleting.
What about a line? Can we have a line break to separate the paragraphs?
You can, but I'm not sure I don't think that would help.
No, I mean, we can do indentation, like if you want.
Yeah. Then I feel like you got to start indenting all the paragraphs.
Yeah. It will maybe look clearer in Markdown.
We can bike shed later.
Yeah. Okay. This policy is designated to minimize harm to users while respecting the interests of researchers and maintainers. And you're stating that we expect this to reduce harm. They're called remediations above.
You can not accept it. I searched. There's both words.
Well, hang on. Well,
One's the fix. One's the process, and one to me remediation is the fix, and the disclosure is the whole thing. Anyway,
softening remediations marginally over the time limit because it's the remediation that is over the time limit, not the discllosure.
that's fine. Yeah.
What is softening landings? I don't know what a softening landing is. I'm not landing a plane.
I know we went back and forth on this, and it ended up back in the document because the way that everybody else tried to phrase the damn thing came out really terribly. Yeah. So, David, if you can let that one go, I would appreciate it. I will, if you
Can you briefly explain it? Because I don't know what it means.
Yeah. We want soft, smooth, well-managed, well-coordinated, harm minimizing disclosures. Because those are the least expensive for everyone. And right. Soft landings. We don't want shit, somebody went early. Oh, the fix isn't right. Hey, 3 fixes later.
Right.
And thrashing.
Right. The use case being, hey, I've got a fix. It broke a bunch of CI things. We need a little bit extra time. We're gonna go out like we need, okay. Right. This is the 14-day extension on the 90 days. Right. That's the softening. Is you can request at the end of the 90 days. Hey,
okay.
I'm not gonna have this out.
Got it.
Right. Okay. That's the softening.
I think the terminology is way too inside baseball, but I understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah. It's also direct copy from Google's policy, so they've been using it for years that way.
All right, fine.
I have to run. I'm not gonna come back and argue if my sentence gets added or not, but
Yeah.
do it all you feel is appropriate. Thanks,
think-
everyone. I have to run.
I think it's already in there. And he's gone. No, he's not gone, but yeah. I don't know. Does anybody else feel strongly that we need a sentence like this? That it be given the paragraph below, do we need this sentence?
Which sentence?
The one that Art has proposed we add, or some variant of it.
I don't
This
think
policy designed to minimize harm.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's probably good. Really, it's the over. Why are we trying to do this?
Is that not okay? Just rereading the final paragraph. Is that not already in the final paragraph? Is this sentence redundant?
Ah, okay, that's a different.
Hmm.
I mean, yes, or arguably the broader paragraph is redundant.
Or it's a succinct opening for those that won't read the final paragraph.
Sure. That's very fair.
No, that works. That works as well. But if that's the purpose and it's going to be the opening, the lead sentence there, then I would suggest that it captures like the entire following paragraph.
Mm.
And it may already, but if there's anything pertinent that you would want in the lead sentence that's missing.
This
That would be-
policy is designed to minimize harm to users.
Yeah,
Well,
you know what?
I think-
It's similar, but it seems like an overall summary of the whole paragraph below it, because the whole paragraph below it has a lot of very specific things. But the new sentence that Art's added, I think it is helpful. I guess I'm
Okay.
coming down to it. It's
I-
you can argue it's redundant, but it's sure a lot simpler to understand.
I agree, but I think there's one problematic word in there, and the word is interests.
Yeah, this back chunk is not accurate. I don't
How
believe
about respecting researchers and maintainers?
it's no, but it's not about that, right? It's so yes, it's a risk. Okay, so yes, we are respecting maintainers, researchers. Less the policy point again is to protect users through its application over the long term, right? It is not necessarily about its applicability in a single case. And that mindset is also what researchers see, right? The researcher mindset is this policy is not just for this one-off. It is because continuous application of such a policy is a forcing function on the industry that requires vulnerabilities to get handled in a more timely manner.
Does adding overtime help?
Yeah, it does.
I got to run.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna be
Yes.
I'm gonna be turning this into a CFP, which is due end of day today for DEF CON. I'm gonna be chatting in the vulnerability disclosures working group Slack channel. If anybody is willing to help contribute to an abstract and helping me come up with a title, I would greatly appreciate the time, resources, and energy dedicated to that effort. I will probably be spinning up a Zoom call, just running continuously throughout the day. So if anybody wants to hop in and help, please don't hesitate to do so.
I recommend moving the footnote, by the way, to the main body, because footnotes are invisible in a lot of browsers. I put in the comments and into the document. You can see it.
Putting the footnote where? What?
Footnotes are invisible in a lot of browsers. If you have a footnote, it's like it doesn't exist. So if you want a footnote, it has to be for text you don't care about. I recommend not having footnotes in the, because this is going to become HTML, and then the HTML, no one will see it.
It's gonna go marked. It's gonna become markdown, but yes.
Even worse. Yes, but Markdown becomes HTML. And then no one will see it. So I suggest moving into the main body, and I put a comment in. I got to run.
Okay. Bye. I'm gonna hang out here if you guys.